Hello, am I audible? Just checking before we start. Hello, am I audible? Just checking before we start.
Yes, Mamelo, you are. I can hear you from here.
Thank you, Dr. Nati.
Hi, everyone. You're all welcome. We're all here earlier today. Let's just wait for the others. Hi, Isanda, Kiribuhile, Mamhao. Isanda, where are you? It's also raining badly. I'm in a very bad weather where I am. Where are you?
I'm in King Williamstown.
Oh, you're just in my neighborhood. Okay. Okay. So I believe you when you're saying it's raining, and I'm very worried about my network. The weather is not so good this side.
Yeah, ish.
I'm sitting in East London Kids Beach at the moment. So I'm in your neighborhood. I'm next door. Lesotho, is it? Is it? I thought that it was just this part of the Eastern Cape that was having this bad weather. Lesotho is also experiencing it. Sure. I hope you are safe, Kilibuhile there. And I hope that our network does not compromise us, because one thing about bad weather, it affects the network.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Mama.
How are you?
We are good, thank you. We are just worried about the weather, and we're talking about the weather. How's the weather where you are?
It's so bad.
So bad. Where are you?
I'm also so worried. It is so bad, really.
Where are you? Where are you based?
Lesotho.
Oh, you and Kilebuile are both in Lesotho. I hear that the weather is
Yes,
also
ma'am.
not good there. I thought it was just the Eastern Cape that was
Yes.
affected. Hi, Mbali. Mbali, you are in Mpumalanga, are you?
Yes, I'm in Mpumalanga. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How's the weather that side?
It's actually sunny.
Yeah, you are lucky. We
I'm
should
in
all
the
migrate.
I'm in the part of Mpumalanga that is very dry. It hardly ever rains this side.
Sure.
But back home in KZN, because I'm from the south coast, they're saying it's raining and it's bad.
It's bad. Oh, I thought it was this side of the Cape. Yeah, KZN usually would be affected because it comes up from the Cape side, Cape Town side, Western Cape, and it goes up to KZN. Yeah, Lesotho could be snowing, and when Lesotho snows, we are in the same Drakensberg range, so we feel it. Probably
It's cold.
Yeah, it's Mamohao and Kilibolile's fault. We are blaming you, Lesotho people, for this cold. Hi, Ike.
Hi, you need to see me yesterday. I don't know
Ah,
if you people have come, if you've experienced the wind in the CBD, because I'm in the CBD. I had to grab, the lamppost. I had to grab the lamppost to be able to maintain balance. It was so bad that if I was not holding on to one, I would have lost my balance. That's how bad
yeah,
the wind, yeah, yesterday. That's how bad. So, and it's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. In
yeah.
the civic center, if you come to the civic center, CBD area, whoo, yesterday was
Cape
bad.
Town.
Yeah, Cape Town,
Yeah,
yeah.
Cape Town can be
So
very bad.
I grabbed one lamppost, and when that is happening, you should not be crossing the road because you can miss your balance. And if the car is coming, there can be an accident like that. Yeah.
I've only
So
been to Cape Town once, and it was so windy, it was so cold. I never went back, and I'm not looking forward to it. I'm fine.
come during the summer.
But you came to Cape Town to grab a postgraduate qualification, but you don't like the weather.
The
You can't
qualification I
interpret
like,
and
the
have it.
weather, no, thank
We
you.
must
I'll
post
pass.
the certificate if you don't like it. Yeah.
You
Yes,
can't eat your
please.
cake and have it. You have to take
Nah, I'm
the
never
bad
going
and
back.
good of Cape Town.
Yeah, welcome, Ike. Welcome, Cedric,
Thanks.
and welcome, Masabata and Elam. We're just talking about the weather because we're waiting for everyone, and we are learning that it seems like it's a national weather problem or bad weather nationally, except for Mbali, who is in a sunny place now.
I heard now. Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon, Cedric. Are you in Cape Town? Did you experience the bad winds?
Yes, yes. Listen, I'm closer to the beach. I'm here in Mitchell's Plain side, so the wind here is terrible when it's blowing,
Yeah.
and it's cold, cold, cold.
Sure. I don't know who to blame. I was blaming Lesotho just now because they were suspecting that it might be snowing. So I said it was Lesotho who was having this bad weather influence. And now I suspect it's Cape Town. It's coming from that side and it's coming up and affecting everyone in South Africa,
Probably.
except Mbali.
Yeah, so that's the next technological advancement. How can we take weather from one place and take it to another, So we take Mbalis and then we give her Cape Town.
You know what we used to do when we were children, when there was like those bad clouds that are bringing those heavy rains, we would take noisy items and we would beat them up and we would chase the rain away and the storm away, and it seemed to work because we would see it lifting and going to another direction. But I don't know what would weather people say about that.
Yeah. Ooh, Lesotho,
I think we
Lesotho.
are 10 people now. How many more people are we expecting, Ike? When we are a full class, we
A
usually
full
about
class, we are 11. Full class, we're
11,
11. So
including us.
plus, no. So including us,
Afkile,
13,
let me just
14,
check.
15, 16, we'll be
Afkile
16, I think.
Afkile is not joining us. Let me just check quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, Fikile did indicate she sent me an email, she's not feeling well. So I hope she's getting better. Yeah.
And they have an electricity problem as well. So
Oh, yeah, it must be the wind because I lost internet totally the whole of yesterday. I didn't have internet because of it was bad because of the wind. So my data is almost finished. Because I had to use so what I'm
I'm
glad we
also worried
sorted.
about that, this side
Yeah.
also, that when it rains, now we're having a little bit of a break, but when it rains so heavily and it gets windy and we lose network. But it's just been fluctuating. We are lucky that it has not completely cut off.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that today they fixed it, so I hope it just remains fixed because data is expensive. Shish.
and no, I
So
was
do you
without data for a week. My neighbor's dog bit our cable, so we had to struggle with every host and Vumatel
I am with
promoting again.
Africa too. Wow. So
Wow.
weather, animal, What else is going on?
We're
Yeah,
getting
we're
attacked
up and
from
running
all
again.
spheres.
Hmm, hmm.
There's Mandisa. Hi, Mandisa, welcome.
Hi everyone.
Hey,
Thank
Manisa,
you.
how are you?
Good, thank you.
Hmm.
So shall we give another 2 minutes maybe for people to come in?
Yeah, that seems fine.
Okay, I'll just mute Phil for about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we should start. We have apologies from Afikile. Do we have anyone else who has apologized who is not part of us today?
See if anybody sends me. If inbox is full. I don't remember getting from any other person. Yeah,
It's just African.
yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think let's just continue. This week we are shifting from what we covered last week. Last week we talked about decoloniality, and we talked about UDL, and we tried to see where do the two meet and where do they differ and what's relevant for us and not. And this week we are talking about hearing loss in schools, or hearing loss for children, and we want to link the hearing disability to a school setting or a school context. And I hope that by the end of the week, we will be able to elevate that school context into a bigger educational context like your tertiary institution. So we just have to see this week how do we navigate, or how do we understand and make sense of hearing loss and deafness in a school setting. What are the barriers for the children? What are the challenges for the teachers? And so forth. And in the video that we are going to watch today, of a recorded lecture, we have Vera. Vera Hlaise is a lecturer in the audiology department of the University of Cape Town. She's going to give us a breakdown. Firstly, define what is hearing loss, what is deafness, and she will go deeper into the clinical definitions and how will you be able to identify if a child is deaf and or not. And further down in the video, she's going to connect for us the relationship between hearing loss, and learning, and link it all up to education and educational outcomes. And then after that, I think we are going to have a discussion. Before we go there, has anyone engaged with the material that is already there? And if yes, is there any clarity seeking question that perhaps we can start with before we go to the video? Oh, Alice has just joined us. Welcome, Alice. Thank you for coming. We accept the apology. We understand. Masabat?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Unati. Mine is just to say I have engaged with the information. I tried to watch some of the videos, and funny enough, I think this one is my area of interest now. After listening to all the videos and engaging the chapters on the book, I find it quite intriguing in my mind. I don't have the questions as yet, but I feel like I've learned a lot in terms of when I was engaging yesterday. One of the things that come to my mind now, I didn't even know the difference between deaf with a capital letter and the small letter. So that's one of the things that I picked up, which was a new thing for me. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to the engagements for this week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Masabata, for that. I think that's a big thing that you have learned, the difference between the capital D and the small letter D. And Vera is going to talk a little bit about that. Yeah, because one denotes the culture and the other one is talking about the clinical aspect of it. We had a hand up from Alice. She wanted to comment, then Sibonelo. Alice, you wanted to say something? Did you want to say something? Or you were testing if your hand was working? Okay, I see a sharp. Sibonelo, please come through.
Good day, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. Also, I think it was on Sunday or Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, whereby I watched the videos. And I learned, to add on what Masabata said, I learned that a hearing impairment and being deaf, it seems like those are the two different things, because on my side, I thought that if someone has a hearing impairment, automatically that person is deaf. Hence, that hearing impairment can be defined into different categories. That's maybe someone has a hearing loss, someone maybe is hard of hearing, and so forth. So I wanted to show on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that feedback, Sibonelo. I'm happy. This is also my favorite part of this module. But I do see that you are enjoying the module. The fact that 2 days prior to the week you're able to dive in and to listen and read up on what is going to be covered, that makes me very happy, because it means that you are interested in what you are doing and in the next topics. Lelam, let me give you an opportunity to speak.
Hi, good afternoon, class. Thank you very much. I did not yet have chance to go through the readings, unfortunately. Workload has been quite hectic. However, what I wanted to contribute was that I did conduct training today, and in fact, I altered my training to include the Washington list so that I can highlight to the staff where I work the different categories of visual impairments, hearing impairments, etc. And I find it so ironic today that we dealing with deaf, in that I've had two separate deaf interactions today alone. And last week was UDL, we had an attendant assignment. But what I wanted to add, that as Masabata and Sibonelo mentioned previously, the deaf with a capital D, as I've been educated on, is usually people that use the sign language interpreters, and then the deaf with a lowercase d is people that who do not. And then the hearing impairment really is people that have little hearing and also use cochlear implants. Because someone at work raised with me that they wanted to find out if I could speak to somebody, and in fact, you are that person, Unati, because you signed some of our medical reports at NISPIS. I've seen your stamp there. And her problem is that the one ear is fine and the other ear is very affected by background noise. And the issue is that the hearing aid only adjusts both. So it's very interesting, really, when you get into it, to see the differences in hearing impairments and how vast they are and varying. And I just wanted to add my experience that I had today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And thank you for divulging my my extended duties. Yes, I do. As an audiologist, I do some assessments, and I do have students who come to me or who are referred to me for hearing devices and listening devices, and I do sign some of those forms from NFSAS. So you got me there, you caught me there. We have one man.
I apologize. The real question was, Unati, if we could maybe, when we get into things, if you could maybe educate me on if there is any way that you can alter volumes on the two hearing aid, because I understand that they work together. But the query from the woman working there is that the one needs to stay on that volume and she needs the other volume reduced, because she can hear something like a sneeze and it's distracting because the hearing is so sensitized. So is there any device really that would provide that mechanism to change just the one side, is my question to you as a
Yes.
specialist and expert. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. maybe let me just take half a minute of this class to explain that. To say hearing aids are programmable devices. So when you are fitting them, you can either program both or separate them. So if the complaint from the user is that one hearing aid seems to be higher than the other, or maybe they would like it to be adjusted, there is somewhere in the software when you are programming the hearing aids where you separate the two and you just work on the one until the client is happy. So that adjustment is doable. It is doable. They must just see their audiologist and maybe they will find help. I was going to say we will also learn here. I think I don't want to impose on Sibonelo, but if he feels comfortable with some of the questions and some of the interactions, he's going to help us in the class. I think we do have him as a resource as well. And if he's comfortable sharing, then he can share maybe his educational experience and maybe make a comment on some of the material that we are going to be exploring today. Sibonelo, if you are comfortable to do that, then you can just chip in at any time so that we also tap into the resources that we have. We will also learn from you if you feel comfortable with that. Leila?
You mean Kelebohile, our
Yeah, I was thinking, I think you mean Kelebohile.
you mean
Oh,
Kelebohile.
it's Kilebohile from Lesotho,
Yeah.
not Sibonelo.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it's
sorry,
Kelebohile.
sorry. I meant Kilebohile, not you, Sibonelo. And if anyone has had any exposure, hi, sorry. So if anyone has got anyone at home that they can think of, I'm sure we have experienced hearing loss or even deafness at one level or the other. At least this gives us an opportunity to talk about those things and to share our experiences. For instance, my experience would be from being an audiologist and working with the deaf community and people with hearing losses. And we could have Kilebohile sharing his personal experiences if he likes, or if he's comfortable, then we can have other people, because I'm sure we have met hearing loss and deafness at one level or the other, whether we understood it or we did not understand it. But I'm sure at some stage we have met it. And also we are going to talk about the relationship between speech and hearing itself. And yeah, maybe talk about also the deaf speech, if we can label it that way. Why are people who have had hearing loss at birth and who have had hearing loss later on in life speaking differently and maybe understanding things differently? So this is a very vast area, but we will try and contain it to the basics that we need to grab and understand. Is anyone wanting to say anything? Maybe we just go straight to the video. Doreen, if you could switch off your video and are we able to mute him from our side?
Yes, let me help you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Isanda, you can speak.
If you're speaking, you're on mute.
Where is she now? She's gone. I think she's having connectivity issues. She'll probably write on the chat, but I suspect that was not a hand test. Probably wanted to say something. Okay. I think, oh, there she is. She's back. Isanda, did you want to say something? Maybe not. Let's go to the video in the interest of time, and let's watch the lecture. It will take about 40 minutes, Ike, and I think we do have that time.
Are you able?
Oh yes, Isanda.
Oh, let me engage on the comment because it keeps kicking me out. I don't know what's going.
You are welcome.
I think there's a connection issue.
Yeah, I think she said she will engage on the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, at least we already have about 2 comments from her in the chat. So
Oh, I don't see anything. Can you read for us, Ike? I don't see anything on our side.
I'll read it. Oh, sorry. So she said the first question, the first one was around, say after watching the videos, I found myself wondering whether communication is the biggest barrier for deaf learners, or whether it is hearing society's limited understanding of deaf culture. What do you think has the greater impact on learning? Then she went on with the second one, which I think is a question. Say the videos emphasize that deaf people have their own language and culture. Could mainstream inclusion unintentionally contribute to the loss of deaf culture if learners are separated from the deaf community? How do we balance inclusion with the preservation of cultural identity? Yeah, there are 2 questions, comment question which she had.
Could mainstream inclusion unintentionally contribute to the loss of deaf culture if learners are separated from the deaf community? How do we balance inclusion with the preservation of cultural identity? Yeah, I think that's an important, very important question to ask, because when we talk of inclusion, we are talking of taking deaf learners away from the community, not necessarily away, but including them in classrooms where the culture may not necessarily mean that much to the other people, and that could be a compromise. But I think if we look at preserving deaf communities in the first place as homes and resource centers for the children who are deaf, let them stay there in that community and get that culture like any other child would be, oriented to their home and their community culture. And then when they are at school, the school will definitely have a culture that is different. So in a way, we're not taking everything away from them. Although when they are in a deaf school, I believe that they get that cultural immersion, because at school would be the same as at home. But maybe we could allow Kelebohile to weigh in there, or anyone else who has thought about this. Maybe go through the lecture and see what is covered there in the lecture already. We have Masabata who wants to comment on that, wants to engage on that issue of Isanda. Masabata?
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. I think mine is also a question just to try to get another side to Isanda's question, to say, if we're talking about inclusion, my understanding is that we are trying to move away from isolating people or having your kind of me and them setup. So isn't this maybe a way of saying we are infusing these two cultures where the hearing people are able to understand the culture of the deaf community? I'm just trying to think around those lines as I'm listening to the question. Maybe that's to add in terms of when maybe Kilebukile provides an insight into the question. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear that. Maybe let's go to the lecture and then we will come back to have this discussion because I think this is a big one and it is an important one for us. We need to give it time and we need to give it fair time. The issue of deaf culture and inclusion in mainstream schools. But yeah, my thinking is around there. I did not think about this. This is intriguing and it's a good question. Yeah. But my thinking is that we do have societal culture and family culture and community culture. Then schools have got their own culture, but how do we balance the two? How do we make sure that the one does not take away from the other? Yeah, but let's go to the lecture. And when we come back, we will discuss these things. We'll come back to it, Isanda. Let's just flag it for now until we have gone through the basics that the lecture is going to give to us. Oh, let me share my screen first. Let's do this. Start from the beginning.
I don't think the sound is coming through. But I think
Yeah.
just check if because I had that problem. If your mic has to be on.
Doctor,
Yeah.
it's when you must you must unshare and then you share again. Before you start sharing, you must click on share with sound right at the top.
Yeah,
right.
when you're sharing the.
You must click on share sound, yes.
Yeah, once you click on the share button, there's a top right hand corner. You see.
Oh,
yeah,
my sound was closed.
Yeah.
Education. My name is Vera Genevieve Tlaisi. I'm
Is it coming through now?
and research
Yeah, it's coming
in
through.
Cape Town.
Increase your volume.
That is my email there at the bottom. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions or if you'd like to know more about a particular area that.
And then there should be captions for it. Oh, you know what?
Ike, can you share from your side?
Yeah, maybe let me share from my side. Yeah,
Please.
I think because I did the YouTube one, not to be able to get caption. Okay, you can stop sharing, then I'll share from my side.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Share. Just a thumbs up if you hear it. Oops, sorry. It's all the way to the end. Yeah.
Greetings, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to attend and clicking on this lecture.
The audio, the audio is not very loud. And that's one of the things I wanted to mention today, that since we started the course, I've been also depending on captions to be able to keep up. Anyway, let me start it again.
It's coming through much
Thank
better.
you so much for coming to attend and clicking on this lecture. We're going to be talking about teaching children who are deaf and hard of hearing, and critically dissecting the issues that intersect between the ability to hear and your access to education. My name is Vera Genevi Tlaisi. I'm an audiology lecturer and researcher at the University of Cape Town. That is my email there at the bottom. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions, or if you'd like to know more about a particular area that I'm going to be in the many things I'm chatting to you about. And also if more interested in audiology as well as hearing and deafness as a smaller subsection to this bigger short course that you are all doing. Let us get started. In this lecture, we are going to go through three main areas. We're going to tackle what is a hearing loss or deafness or hard of hearing. What is that? What does that mean? What does that look like? How is it measured? How is it determined? Who determines it? What does it impact? And when we start unpacking, what does hearing loss impact, we're going to look at hearing and learning. What is the intersection between these two? Are they parallel? What does one take from the other? What does one need from the other? And so on and so forth. And then last, we really are going to be unpacking some of the classroom accommodations for deaf children and adults as well, depending on what your subpopulation is that you are looking to be working with. And so we're going to start with unpacking hearing loss. What is it? What does that look like? From the slide, that's what we are going to go into next. And so hearing loss, as defined by the World Health Organization, is essentially a medical condition or a disability that is based on you not being able to access sound. And the World Health Organization, in their definition, have covered the nature and the type of hearing loss, how severe it is, the laterality, meaning what side, seeing that there are two ears, at the left side or the right side. And then they've also looked at the configuration, and that's mostly the clinical configuration, that when we measure it with an audiogram, what does that look like? And an audiogram is simply a diagram that we as audiologists put together after measuring your ears to just draw it out. And that kind of drawing is what the configuration is describing. I'll go more in depth into all of these. I just wanted to show you this slide that we're going to then cover, the definitions. We're going to cover what an audiogram looks like and what are the clinical definitions of hearing loss. And then last, we're going to tackle some of the clinical symptoms and indications of hearing loss in children. As indicated in the previous slide, hearing loss is partial or a total inability to hear, and it is diagnosed or determined by a test that audiologists do. So like I said in my introduction slide, I'm an audiologist, but because I'm an academic and in research, I don't necessarily do those anymore. But as a qualified audiologist, I'm a person who is certified to do a hearing sensitivity test to then determine if you have a hearing loss or not. And in that hearing sensitivity test, that's what we then take those results and we put them in what we call an audiogram, not the most creative use of a name. It's just a diagram of the audio test that we would have done. And it'll illustrate the results and help us classify the type of loss and also how severe it is. And speaking of classifications, in the next slide, I'll then show you what are the different classification systems that we use for hearing loss and some of the things that you might encounter if you're looking at a clinical report or just a report or school entry form or application form for a child with a hearing loss. And here are the classification systems. So you have classification in terms of type, meaning what kind of a hearing loss is it? And there are 3 different types that I will explore in the next slide. And then we look at severity. There's 4 main severity levels that a hearing loss can be. I'll also do that in the follow-up slide after I talk about types. And then lastly, there's the laterality, meaning is it in one ear and we call it unilateral, or is it in both ears? We call that bilateral. So I'll cover each and every one of these, but I just thought it would be nice to give you an overview of the classification systems. There's a type, there's a severity, and there's a laterality. There are 3 types of hearing loss, and looking at the infographic there, you will see that the first one in the blue is a sensory neural hearing loss. This is usually the permanent kind of hearing loss. This is a hearing loss where your sensory or your neural organs are affected, hence the name sensory neural. And if we look at the image next to it, it is that yellow shaded area where you can see it in the inner ear, where the hearing organ is, as well as where the nerves are for the ear. If that part of the ear is affected, then you will have what we call a sensory neural hearing loss. And it's permanent because to date we haven't found necessarily a cure or a method to reverse that kind of a hearing loss. And so it is a permanent kind of hearing loss. Then in the next bit, we have a conductive hearing loss. That's in the green bit. It's usually called a temporary hearing loss because what usually happens in a conductive hearing loss is in that white area that you see in the ear there, when there's an issue with how the sound is conducted from your eardrum or through your ear canal to your eardrum right down to the middle ear, the red section there, if there's maybe a blockage, if there's fluid, if there's anything there, usually the ear, nose, and throat surgeon can remove that, or ear, nose, and throat specialist can then prescribe medication to take some of that infection or fluid away. They can even drain some of the fluid, because that red area that you see there in the middle ear through the eustachian tube there at the bottom connects to your nose. And with most children, if you have any kind of snot or kind of flu or viral infection, you end up having an ear infection, which should, in the simple sense, be able to be cured. But if we look at our context in South Africa, not everybody has access to audiologists and ENTs for the ear infection to be diagnosed in time and healed in time. Not everybody has access to sanitation and hygiene. Not everybody has access to health care, number one, never mind to specialized services like audiology and ear, nose, and throat specialists. And so sometimes these things go unnoticed and they're recurrent. And also, if you look at our context, we have a lot of children in the continent, and this is just not specific to South Africa, that are struggling with other bigger lifelong infections such as HIV, TB, and many other issues that then make children much more susceptible to conductive losses. That's why it's most common in children. And then when we start talking about a mixed hearing loss, you're looking at a hearing loss that is affecting the conduction of the sound as well as the nerves and the sensory organs. So the problem can be in any of the areas or in all of the areas. It can happen in such a manner. And so when we are classifying hearing loss according to the types, that is what we are talking about. And so if you see a report saying conductive hearing loss, in a child, oh, okay, this is a loss that, usually is temporary, but we say temporary because there is an ability to cure it. But in actual action, it may not necessarily be curable because it reoccurs so often, and so on and so forth. So now I'm going to show you another slide where we're going to talk about the hearing severity. And here we are on the slide. We have the picture version of what I've been alluding to, the audiogram. On the y-axis, you've got the decibels from the tippity top there in yellow, from -10 going all the way down to 120. We've got the decibels that mean the loudness of the sound. And on the x-axis, we've got what we as audiologists call frequencies, but it's really just a pitch of the sound, meaning from the left-hand side, we have the lowest pitch of sound that we're trying to capture, what your ear hears at what level, all the way to the right-hand side where it goes to the highest pitch. I'm trying to, give you a sound example as you're listening, but everything in between. And in this audiogram, we cover everything and we make a drawing, and that's where the configuration comes in, and also the determination of the actual level or severity from normal, mild, moderate, severe to profound. And on the right-hand side, we've got the noise levels. I put a picture there to help you look at the noise level. So for example, something that's at 30 decibels, it's like the sound of a soft whistle. And if you look at the opposite on the other side, where 106 decibels is the sound of a leaf blower or a chainsaw or maybe a car race, a gunshot, that's just, the range of what our ears can hear or not. Because when you're sitting at profound hearing loss, it means you couldn't hear a gunshot if it was shot next to you. You might feel the vibration, but in terms of sense of hearing, if you have a profound hearing loss, you would not be able to hear that. In this slide, you just have a image version of what the World Health Organization grades hearing loss as in terms of decibels. So similar to the color coding that you saw in the previous slide in the audiogram, here they have it in a nice infographic on how they classify disabling hearing loss. Now, when we start talking about disabling, we start alluding to functional impact of the hearing loss on the child or the adult. What are the functions that are impaired, that are not necessarily effective or able to be used or accessed because of the hearing loss? And according to World Health Organization, they take anything above 40 decibels as a disabling hearing loss. And there's different grading systems, but I thought it would be important to share with you the World Health Organization grading system. And of course, this is, a nice, easily accessible image because it's color coded and it's pretty, and especially if we're talking about children and the school space. Now, the terminology in our field is quite varied. I'm not sure as to the reason for this, the amount of terms that are used to describe hearing loss or hearing condition, but I just thought it would be important to conscientize you to the various naming or nomenclature that you might find that are actually referring to the same thing. The one thing I want to highlight is that very last bullet where you see deaf with a capital D and deaf with a small caps D. Now that is not the same as the rest of them, especially in the South African context. The capital D refers to deaf culture and identity as informed by, a set of social beliefs, behaviors, traditions, and there's quite a lot of history. And as a people, deaf people have their own shared institutions and communities that influence, some of their languages and how they relate to one another. And it's not necessarily looking at them just as they have a hearing disability. No, they identify as deaf people and they communicate using sign language. And in South Africa, it is called South African Sign Language because it is different. In different regions, you have different versions of sign language as you do with any other language. So you would have American Sign, you have International Sign, you've got South African Sign. So I just wanted to conscientize everybody to the fact that D with a capital on deaf means something different to D with a small cap. I tried to include it in the small text there at the bottom, so I hope you can read that and be aware of the key differences in the naming. The academic in me could not, prepare a small lecture without giving the context of the prevalence, the numbers. What are we looking at? How many people have hearing loss and how many people are affected? It's very easy to go by unseen because it is technically called an invisible disability, because it's not like a physical or cognitive or any other disability that is easy to see or identify just by looking at a person. And so almost 500 million people worldwide actually have disabling hearing loss. And of those, just over 30 million are children. And these numbers are, of course, compiled through research, and they're not necessarily always the most accurate representation of the numbers in every single region of the world. I believe in South Africa, we have a higher number, or in Africa, we have a higher number. It's just, it may be undocumented, and worse yet, it may be undiagnosed. So those are just some numbers for you to have a look at and give you context of how big the problem is in terms of scale as it relates to the rest of the world. And to match the global prevalence numbers, I thought it might be useful to provide you with some regional prevalence. Just a caution, they are a little bit old because we are mostly doing population-based numbers or population-based prevalence statistics in line with the census. Excuse me, I do have a bit of a flu as I'm recording this for you. So the numbers, like I was saying, are a bit older because we are waiting for the most recent census. I believe it's been happening in the last year or two, and actually still is happening in South Africa now in 2022. So just to give you a regional look as well into the numbers. I think, when we start looking at the term disabling, it's a very it's a loaded term for the lack of a better way of describing it. And I've alluded before when I was talking about the severity of the loss, that numerically or clinically, when we are diagnosing a hearing loss, we say anything above 40 decibels is disabling. But when we actually start talking about a person and the people who live with deafness and who are deaf or who have a hearing loss, what actually makes the hearing loss disabling? So if you look at, for example, the functional aspects of what do you actually use your hearing for, because when you start asking that question, then you start unpacking the things that you will not have access to, or the things that will be made more difficult for you to function. So for example, you and I today are engaging in an educational activity using technology asynchronously because you are able to hear the English language, you're able to access information through written language and through spoken language. And so functionally, if you had a hearing loss, you would need some assistive devices to help you access the information that I'm providing right now through my voice. And so your access to knowledge, your access to education, your interaction with technology, your interaction with the world, if you actually think about it, because communication on the biggest part is a hearing activity. It's a hearing function. And so just from the get, functionally, communication is the biggest thing that will become a challenge. But also, if you think about the social implications of you not being able to hear appropriately, it goes to, are you able to follow group conversation? Are you able to follow when you are having connections with people and there's background noise? Then you have to start thinking about every time you go to a restaurant, every time you use a phone, every time you are attending a musical concert, when you are driving, when you are learning a new song, when anything that you were doing as a human being, you tend going to realize you actually need your hearing and your ability to connect to a hearing world, and a world that is filled with so many sounds. Even a walk. Some of the reasons why a walk is calming and relaxing is because you can hear the nature, you can hear the birds, and you are in silence because you choose to be in silence. As opposed to the alternative where you're not able to interact with nature because you cannot hear the birds, you cannot hear the rustling leaves. And I mean, I could go on and on about what are the smaller things and the bigger things that makes hearing loss disabling to those that are living with it. And then lastly, when you look at the economical impact, for example, if you are working at a call center, if you're unable to hear, and there are no necessary technology and accommodations and interventions that are made available to you, it becomes very hard to function at a call center where, for example, majority of what you're doing, you're listening through a phone or listening through a headphone, which in and of itself has its own issues, even for hearing people. You know, we sometimes struggle to hear people on the other side because of network, because of connectivity. Now, if you add a hearing loss to that, it excludes you to many economic opportunities. And also, if we start thinking about certain jobs where your hearing is actually part of your safety, if you think about being a long distance driver, if you even think about driving at all, you don't know it when you have the ability to hear, but a lot of what you use to be able to tell whether you're safe, whether there's another car behind you, whether, you know, there's danger, or is your car sounding okay? Do you have a puncture? You are actually using your sense of hearing and your sense of vision, as well as the rest of your body and your mind as well, you know, of course, to function in terms of the skill. But if you were a driver and you're not able to hear, actually in some sectors, they do what we call medical examination tests, and you are then declared unfit for work. Certain things like being a mining engineer or in mining, it is required that you're able to hear in order for you to be declared fit, among other health related assessments that they do. So the economical impact is huge because your ability to function in the economic market is reduced unless it is then assisted by intervention and rehabilitation, which is where the audiologist would come in. And if you look at a child on the opposite end, if you're unable to access communication, there's certain things that affect your learning and your education system, which is what I'm going to chat to you about shortly in the next slide. But then it also impedes your economic potential and what are the things that you're able to reach when you grow up with a particular hearing loss. And so what makes a hearing loss disabling, unfortunately, is the environment, the society, the systems, because they are geared for people who are able to hear and not the other way around. So it could be an issue of inclusivity, where the design of most things in the world were designed for hearing able people. And so when you're not able to hear, the environment around you, the society around you, the systems around you disable you as a person with a hearing loss. Now, we're at the crux, we're at the meaty bit of why you and I are engaging today. What makes hearing loss disabling for children? What are the issues that are impacted in a child's developmental journey when they have a hearing loss? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've alluded to it. Hearing is how we connect with the world, because the world is a hearing world and is a hearing society and environment, you know, on the most part, on the majority part. When you take away that ability to a child, their ability to learn communication on a linguistic level in terms of speech and language development is then delayed. Because if you think about if you've been exposed to children or if you have your own in your family, it takes a typically developing child almost 12 months of listening and hearing and encoding a language, whether you're speaking isiZulu, Xhosa, Afrikaans, French, Spanish, English. It takes a child almost 12 months of listening and hearing and just being exposed to that audition and that sound of a language for them to even start mimicking one word. And that's in a typically developing child. Now, when you don't have full access to listening and to encoding and decoding the language that you have access to via sound, then you are delayed. So, for example, the reason why we sound how we sound is because our brains and our hearing organs spent years encoding this information, and then we learn how to then produce the same information. And even that learning process, when you are talking, you're able to hear yourself back, and you're able to then, make corrections to how you sound, your prosody, your intonation, all of those things in terms of communication and language and engagement are a skill that you learn through the ability to hear, because a lot of language and a lot of communication is verbal. It doesn't mean that if you do have a hearing loss, however, you cannot communicate and you cannot engage. No, you can, but then it has to be assisted, or it has to be visual, and that's where something like sign language comes in. But all of these things need to happen if we enable early identification of the hearing loss, if we enable inclusive systems for children when they are young, in the early communication development and in early childhood development centers, for them to then be inclusive in their design, such that if a child has a hearing loss or a vision loss, or an intellectual difficulty, we are able to then catch those children early and enable them what we like to call catch-up growth through assistance and rehabilitation. And I would hope through people like you and I who are engaged in topics like this, we're able to also do the same for children with disabling hearing loss. And, to that last bit about social, emotional, and behavioral effects, or even scholastic and academic impact, when you are not able to participate in an environment where everything is presented through sound and you don't have access to that sound, you are then often misdiagnosed as a child who misbehaves, a child who's not attentive, a child who sometimes, I've seen cases where children are labeled as the ADHD child, or, there must be problems at home. Everyone is trying to, put a label on you, because sometimes lack of understanding and knowledge and access to the information that perhaps this child is not seeing what I'm writing on the board. Perhaps this child is not even able to hear anything, or they have a partial hearing loss and they're not able to access the sound, hence they're acting out. And some children are tagged with behavioral issues when in fact it's a hearing loss that has been either undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. And with the correct assistance and proper accommodation in the classroom and in the learning or even education system, we're able to reach to that child and provide the scholastic support that might be needed. Now, in the next slide, I'm going to share even more on the effect of hearing loss on the actual ability to learn. So I don't know how many of us are aware that our ability to read is in fact encoded in our brains through the ability to hear. I'll quickly unpack. How many of us know the song A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, right? Now, I'm sure all of you might have sang the song, heard of the song, or in many ways were taught the song first before you attached the sound to what the letter looked like. Now, this is what we call speech perception. You first are taught how to perceive sound, and then you are then taught how to attach that sound of speech or a syllable to a written phoneme. We call it a written phoneme because, if you think back to how you were taught in nursery school or even in primary school, they would teach you e, I, o, u, right down to how you see the mouth and the speech production process is happening in the face. And obviously we were taught through repetition, but that is the entire process of phonemic awareness. Now, if you're not able to hear, this entire exercise precludes you from being able to associate what you hear to what you see visually, which is the written language, right? And so a ba to you doesn't mean ba that you see on the written paper. A ba to you might just be what you feel in terms of your lips vibrate instead of you hearing the sound ba. And if you take out that entire system of teaching children literacy and the ability to read through sound, you then have to stop and think, oh, wait, but how else do we teach them? Then you stop and you think of, oh, what happens to children who can't see? Even if you can hear, if you can't see the letters, oh, you need to feel. What does that introduce into the learning system? It introduces sensory learning. Sensory learning meaning you use touch, you use feeling, and you use all of their senses outside of their vision to teach them, right? If you think of Braille, if you're aware of Braille. But the point I'm trying to make here is language development, speech perception, literacy, all of that as it stands, to my current knowledge and understanding in the education system, is based on your ability to access sound. It could be in any language, whether you're being taught Chivenda or you are being taught Swahili, you are first taught access to that language through sound. Then they teach you how to attach the sound to the written version of the visual sound. And then you are taught the fine motor skill to then attach to you being able to write. Now, your access to reading and writing, we all know what that impacts in future. But if you're not able to attach yourself to the ability to identify the sound and attach the sound to the written literacy language, you already are at a gap and you're already going to experience a delay. Now, in this slide, you will see that there's a link to a YouTube video. I want you to take your time maybe after this and watch that video and see what I'm talking about when I talk about phonemic awareness and how it is used in the education system as it stands to facilitate literacy. Now, all of this is good and well, but we need to then start thinking about what are the learning adaptations that we need to introduce into the education system to provide access to that sound for those that do not have it because they have a hearing loss, because this is then going to affect their ability to learn. I have shared with you a resource, and a few resources. The first two are articles that, explain more and go into more depth about hearing loss and learning, and teaching systems and education systems for children who are deaf. And I want you to take your time and have a look at those readings. Obviously, they're suggested, they're not imposed on you, but if you want to know more and delve into this, have a look at that. But I want us to spend time quickly on a worksheet that provides some guidance on how could you begin to accommodate a child that has a hearing loss in a classroom, or even an adult that has a hearing loss in a learning environment, or even in an engagement where you are in a group setting. So I'll quickly stop the narration on this slide so we can go on to the follow-up slides as our time is running out. I also thought it important to just put a disclaimer that I am aware that the first reading is a bit older, but I like that reading because it gives you the background on the considerations in educating deaf and hard of hearing students, particularly what does that mean when you say in an inclusive setting? What is an inclusive setting? I just thought, I'm not just going to put it there and you're going to look and be like, oh my God, giving us, a suggested reading from 1999. I know it's old, but these are some of the fundamentals and pioneering, literature from the Journal of Deaf Studies and Deaf Education. And I really, really like it also because it's short, it's easy to read and get through. The second one is more recent, but it's a thesis in bicultural and bilingual education. I wanted to expose you to some of the terminology that you might come across in this kind of work or in this kind of field, because if you remember, I spoke about capital D for deaf, meaning and alluding to identity and culture. And so when you start looking at language and how you communicate as part of a culture, when you're exposing a deaf child to the hearing world and hearing systems, you are entering a world of biculturalism and bilingualism, because they will, inadvertently be exposed to a verbal language or a hearing language, as well as a visual language, if, they do choose to communicate using sign language. So if you do have the time, have a quick squiz through those readings, and hopefully they will enrich your knowledge into the topic area with more depth and richness. And some of the questions that I would hope that you're going to walk away from this lecture asking yourself is, what are the issues that I, in my particular field of practice, field of knowledge, field of exposure, and just my sphere of influence, what are the issues that I should be aware of? What are the challenges? Now that I have a glimpse of an understanding of how much we actually use our hearing, and how, for example, if you're a child or an adult in a learning system, how are you impacted? And I think just by virtue of asking that kind of question, you're already setting yourself in the right path to look at how can we make education inclusive for children with hearing loss. So these are just some of the issues or some of the questions I hope you ask yourself, and you start engaging and discussing within, some of the participants in this short course. The other thing I really wanted to conscientize everybody to is, some of the legal documents, the policy documents, government documents that are available that cover, what inclusive education should look like, what, how does the intersection of human rights and constitutional rights, your health rights, intersect with all of this? What are the key policies and legal documents and implications that I should be aware of? Because then the more you start scratching, the more you discover that actually the bigger picture here is that, do we have the correct policies or do we not? Is it an issue at policy making? Is it an issue at policy implementation? Is it at resource level? So to start engaging your mind even at a broader space, I thought it would be important to put that out. I have also shared with you a worksheet that I'll actually show you the picture version of the worksheet in the next slide. But in this worksheet, you will see that according to the different severity levels of hearing loss, it shows you what are some of the things that you can actually practically do in a hearing setting where there's a child with a hearing loss. So this may not necessarily be in a special school. It may be in an area where you have a few children with hearing loss among children with hearing loss. It would completely be different if the situation was in the inverse. And then it also just talks to what are some of the resources that you might need, or you might use, or you might even, make yourself if you are a DIY kind of a person. So I'll quickly show you the picture version of the worksheet so you know how to navigate the use of the worksheet in your own space. And here is the worksheet. So you will see there are 3 columns, and the first column is on the possible impact on understanding of language and speech. Then there's the possible social impact, and then there's the educational accommodations and services. And above of those headings, you'll see on the row, there's a hearing loss, and then there's numbers. Those numbers are attached to the level of hearing loss. So a 16 to 25 decibel hearing loss, that would be a mild hearing loss. And then the further down you go, the worksheet, you'll see the numbers go higher and higher, meaning the severity is going higher and higher. So you will see, for example, under the potential educational accommodation services, they are suggesting methods like favorable seating, meaning you might want to put the child further up front so that the sound travels a lesser distance and has a higher potential of still being at the same volume when it gets to their ears, compared to if they were at the back, then the sound has to travel farther. And for example, you may want to have a hearing aid or a personal FM system, and these are just some of the assistive devices that an audiologist or hearing healthcare professional might be able to recommend for the child. You might have, to look at the acoustic environment of the classroom, for example. Is there background noise that might distract the child from the educational instruction? And so this worksheet takes you through the potential accommodations for each level of the hearing loss. And I've made this available to you, and it is from an article, so it is evidence-based. There's obviously many other resources, but I thought this is a good starting point to illustrate, some of the tangible things that you can do in your environment where you don't necessarily need to break the bank to make some of these accommodations. And so I hope this is useful for your environment, and that you're able to begin to see the tip of the iceberg on the amount of just intervention or even support a child with a hearing loss needs to function compared to a child who does not have a hearing loss when they are having to engage learning tasks. And then last, as we come to the conclusion of our session, I thought it might be interesting and also perhaps a engaging exercise for you to also experience a simulated hearing loss. What does that, sound like? What is that experience like? And you can click on that link in your own time and just have a look. And I hope that this encourages you to approach communication with a child with hearing loss with empathy, and also inspire some action towards the advocacy for children with hearing loss, especially in the school setting. Please feel free to email me any questions if you have, or feel free to use the live session that we're going to have to pose questions or to have an opportunity to discuss more and in more in depth with me. I really, really look forward to engaging with you. Thank you so much for your time. In the last slide, I won't narrate over it. You'll just see my email again in case you need to contact me. Thank you so much for your time, and all the best for your experience in the rest of the show.
Thank you so much, Ike.
Oh,
I think that came through much clearer, and it was an engaging and interesting piece of information. But really, it is a tip of an iceberg. And I'm sure we could feel from the pace of her speech that she was rushing through for this video to be as short as possible. But there's quite a lot of information that she has introduced us to. But it's really at a very high level, if I may say, but it's not in depth at all. And one will require to engage with the material that we have, and also engage with us and her in terms of understanding deeper some of the things. But I think the purpose of the course is not necessarily to learn in depth about audiology per se, but just to get an idea and be exposed to information about what is the role of hearing and how the hearing loss affects one's education, and what other measurements that one can do to try and accommodate and to advocate for people living with a hearing disability in general. And therefore, our time now is 4:15. We should be going for a break at 4:30. What do you suggest we do? Shall we take questions now and go for a break, or maybe take a break now? We do have another video. Ike, do you have an idea of how long the other video is?
So it will be good if you can watch. There are two videos. I saw the ones from Jabbar. The first one is 11 minutes, about 12 minutes. Then the second one is about 10 minutes. So let's say about 22 minutes in total. Two videos.
About 22 minutes in total. I don't want us to let's decide whether we want to take questions now. Maybe let's take questions now and engage in this 15 minutes a little bit. If we don't finish, then we'll take a break and continue with our engagement, and maybe after 5, sometime when we finish the engagement with this one, then we can listen to Jeba and engage with him further. I think the focus here from this presentation that we've just listened to was on children and a school setting. And I think Jaba is going to share his personal experience. And I think his presentation is going to take us up to what happens when one is post schooling, and we'll look at that. So what do you think about this information? Some of it was technical, but I think it was all necessary for us to understand the basics of audiology and hearing and how it works. Can we get comments and questions and engage on this piece of learning that we've just been through? Thank you, Lelam.
Thank you so much, Unati. I found it extremely informative for me in learning the different levels of hearing and how the decibels is what categorizes your severity of your hearing. And then what I also really enjoyed was how you read the graph, because I often get these graphs and I never understand what's going on. But it's great to have that kind of insight now. So yes, I found it very educating, and now I'm inspired to go and look at the rest of the readings. Thank you.
I'm glad that we managed to inspire you to go and do the deeper reading. We have Sibonelo next, Masabata, then Kilebohile.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. You are next, Sibonelo. Or is it Masabata? I think Masabata is next.
No, I think it's Sibonelo.
Oh, no,
Sibonelo
it's
is-
Sibonelo.
Yeah.
Sibonelo, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. No, what I captured in the video mostly is something that I've noticed. I didn't notice which slide, but when she was speaking about the age group, that in certain year there'll be an age group that will having a hearing loss, of which is quite very true. Because if you look at the kids that you have these days, they use a lot of technology devices such as earphones that they use it in every day. They listen to music. Sometimes they don't even socialize with their families. They lock themselves in the bedrooms and using those earphones. And that's in certain age, there'll be a lot of people that will have a hearing loss, because I'm one of those as well. I started to using earphones when I was listening to music, I think in 2010. And I've noticed last year that one of my ear is not hearing properly. Sometimes I hear like, wait, so small. And then I went to the occupational health at work to be examined. And they referred me to the audiologist. I didn't go though to the audiologist. However, what she said there is typically true. It's something that will happen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sibonelo. I won't face you now and ask you why did you not go when you were referred to go. But let's leave that for a bilateral. Masabata?
Thank you so much, Nati. I think for me, yes, I agree with the other colleagues that this is very, very informative. And what comes to my mind now it's like I'm trying to see how this lesson links to the inclusion in schools. I think I'm struggling to put it correct, but what comes to my mind now is a child who is not diagnosed of a hearing loss, but as I'm looking at the disabling things that she has listed, one of the things would be cognitive milestone, the behavior, and the academic impact. I find it, in most instances, you'll find a child, I don't know if it will be because of the use of earphones a lot, or it is just something that the child is born with. When you try to engage with the child, that child is not responsive. Sometimes you will hear the child saying, huh, in a number of times when you're trying to engage with the child. And when you take it further, this child's performance in school, it's not up to the standard where the child would be saying the child is passing. And when I'm saying I'm trying to link it with the inclusive education, I'm seeing a gap in terms of the teacher identifying that there's a problem with this child's hearing. And also at home, there's a gap in terms of the family recognizing that there's a problem with this child in terms of hearing. And this child ends up being labeled to have an intellectual disability. So I don't know, Dr. Onati, whether there has ever been an instance where you would find that because this child has never been diagnosed of a hearing loss, it has affected this cycle of the child's life to a point of whereby the child leaves school because nobody is supportive of this child. And it's just something that is happening. And I have a child in mind as I'm talking right now, where I see this kind of signs that are being stated here, and wondering as to whether, as the society, are we also contributing in terms of creating this barrier for children? Because sometimes when you are trying to talk to this child and the child is not responding, you will howl. You will howl, and the child starts to withdraw. Every time when you try to engage with the child is not now responsive. So I'm just having this battle in my mind in terms of trying to understand as to whether are these related, maybe, or maybe I'm making an issue out of something that is not. Yeah, let me pause there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Masabata, for that question. It's actually going to assist us to link and make sense of this lecture that we have led from. I'm going to start anyway to make a comment or a response. I might not be 100% correct, but everyone else who's got something to say may come in and weigh in onto this matter. First of all, I think what this lecture introduces to us is some level of awareness about hearing loss. And this awareness should not be something that is only happening into this class. We should be aware as communities that the hearing loss is something that is problematic in the development of a child. And we should at least have an understanding or an idea of where and when and how to refer for a child who's got a hearing loss, because we are speaking about a child now. it is unfortunate that the context that we are in is a context of poor resources in terms of manpower or human resources or qualified people. Because if we had as many audiologists as maybe nurses, if I may put it that way, or at least close to that number, I think the society would be more aware of these challenges. But it's just that at this stage, the focus of our healthcare system is on the so-called bigger or more urgent or situations that are dire, if I can put it that way. And these do not come as high up in the hierarchy and in the priority of government, unfortunately. And this awareness needs also to go to the schools so that the teachers know when and how to identify. And said, thank you. I was going to talk about SIAS, and I was going to say that now we are making progress. The progress is slow, but the progress is there because in terms of policy, there are now guidelines and there are policies that speak to this delay or speak to this lack or gap in our healthcare system. We've got this SIAS policy, and this SIAS policy is saying that children must be screened and there must be a diagnosis. And this is meant to be for everyone, for every child that goes to school, so that they can be identified early. But I'm sure there are reasons why that is not happening. And one of the reasons is lack of awareness and lack of human resource to actually do that identification. And I think a lot of training needs to be done also for the teachers, but also we must think for the teachers, the amount of work that they must do on top of the teaching, which is their core business. But all these things needs to be in place. I think that is why now in government we do have offices of inclusive education and we've got specialists there, and now they are trying to appoint qualified people to be part of these DBS teams and these school-based teams that we talked about in our previous talk when we mentioned SIAS as well. And that also I want to mention the second policy, which is a hearing screening policy. And that policy comes as a basic foundation of early identification. And that policy says that every child before discharge in a hospital, they must be screened for hearing. Some of people who are advantaged and they've been to private hospitals mostly, before they are discharged with their babies, they get hearing screened. And before you go out, before you go home with your child, you do have an idea of whether there's a problem or not. And that speaks to early identification. But even that has not been rolled out to the depths and the heights of the country. But there is a policy that speaks to that. Hence, I am saying that there is progress, but the progress is very slow. And although we have those and that slow progress, unfortunately, we've got children that we are losing along the way, and they are falling into the tracks and they are losing on their education. But I also want to say that in this same presentation, Hlaisi has presented two tools that I think are important for us. One, the audiogram and how to read it. And I'm glad that Lelam has learned something from it. It's something that we can download and it's something that we can familiarize ourselves with. It is a medical model, but it is a starting point to identify and to acknowledge and recognize that this child does have a hearing loss. And she has also talked about that form where she is talking about classroom adjustments that can be done. And in the form that she has presented, she has that form specifies that if the child has got this level of hearing loss or this amount of hearing loss, this is what can be done to adjust the environment in the classroom and to accommodate the child. And that goes up to a child who has got a very huge hearing loss. But also, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I'm trying to bring in the dots together. But also we must remember that all these, we are talking about a child who has got a hearing loss, and this does not speak to a child who is deaf. And when we are talking about a child who is deaf, we are talking about a child who has got no access to sound at all, who has been medically declared that this one does not have access at all. And for that child, we cannot put in a well, I don't want to say we can't put in a inclusive class, but it is very challenging for that one because the way in which that child is going to learn is totally different. They will not benefit from being fitted with assistive devices. They need to be exposed to sign language and to the culture of sign language early enough. And therefore, that brings us to the first question that was asked by Masabata earlier. If I'm quoting you right, if it was you, Masabata, where you were talking about deafness and inclusion and culture and removing children from their culture. But I feel before I confuse everyone and confuse myself, it was Isanda. Let me hold it there and let me allow other people to weigh in. And I see it's almost it's past the break time. I don't know if we should be taking a break and coming back to this, but I think we do need to talk about it some more.
Yeah, I think maybe let them keep their comments, just pack it, and once we come back, we can start with that. If people agree, so that they have the break.
Yeah, but before we go, did I make sense to the people that have made the first round of comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, let's take a break and let's be back at 5.
5, yeah.
And please keep those comments coming, and I will open the platform so that it becomes a discussion, not a bilateral dialogue from myself.
Thanks.
See you at 5.
See you at 5.